All right. At this time, I'd like to welcome my guest, Heather Quisel. Right? Did I? Yeah.
You
Okay.
nailed it.
I nailed it. All right. Okay. Awesome. Okay. She is a coach and an entrepreneur and has an amazing story. And so I wanted to bring her on to talk about her story, but also some help for things in life that can help us in our healing. And so thanks for joining the show, Heather.
Yeah, Ryan, thanks for having me. This is really exciting. Um, it's so bizarre actually to hear you say she has such an inspiring story because I
Well,
never wanted to be known or inspiring for, losing a spouse. And
right.
here I am,
Right. Right.
right?
Yeah, well, and that's the thing too. We don't necessarily choose that part of it, but I think what people learn from you is that, it's kind of what you do with it, right? What you do
Yeah.
with that, the stuff that kind of comes at us. So, but yeah, it's kind of a weird, and the words of amazing story. Yes, it's
Yes.
not
Yes.
amazing what you've done with your story and the things that have kind of been thrown at you. So, but anyway, so can we just start off with that? Just give my
Yeah.
listeners a taste for kind of what your background is, your
Yeah.
story, kind of where you're coming from, and we can just go from there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's what you choose, to do when life comes at you. And really, Ryan, like my story, I what I really want it to be is one of resilience and overcoming adversity and really choosing love and life. And I have been in the mindset space for over a decade. If I could go back again and probably go into psychology. I love all that stuff. And
Mhm.
I got into the business game through network marketing. And that's really where I got introduced to like like personal development and self-help and healing. And when I was very young, I had been kidnapped and molested. And, as a kid, and back then, you just didn't get help. My parents were told she was too young to remember,
Mhm.
and so here, we get into adulthood and real life, and these things just don't go away until we deal with them. And so I had, spent, a good decade of my life really, learning psychology and inner child and, all the things to heal my heart and be whole. And at the same time, I was raising a family with my late husband, Larry, and we were crushing it in business and just loving life. And then life wasn't that way anymore. Larry passed away suddenly and unexpectedly in 2018. My kids were, I think, like 10, 14, and 16 at the time. And I mean, it was devastating. I
Yeah.
mean,
Mhm.
there's no way to say that. But like I said, like I never wanted to be a widow. I definitely don't want to be defined by that's the woman that lost her husband. And I certainly never wanted to also die
Mhm.
in my soul and in my spirit the day that he died. And I had
Mhm.
kids to lead. And so, life changed very quickly. And I kind of put my mindset to work and worked really quickly and I thought efficiently
That's good.
into like all things grief and loss, but I'm still, the reality is it's like 2.5 years out and I'm remarried. We have a blended family. My kids are thriving and we're choosing a life of wholeness with the memories and, the lessons and the
Mhm.
beauty that was Larry Quisel.
Mhm.
And, choosing to continue to walk this life because we've been given another day.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love the notion of just like the aspect of choosing, because I think that is so huge as far as our, what again, what happens to us and what we do with it, that we do have a choice. We don't have to be confined by circumstance or even by, like you said, like a label, right? Like,
Yeah.
well, you're a widow, so you have to be a widow. You have to act like a widow. You have to whatever. And again,
Mhm.
some people might take offense to that, or they might have, well, but that's what you are, or
Yeah.
but so with, even with something like that, like what was your process, even like you kind of touched on that a little bit, just that you didn't want to be defined by that, but what was your sort of process, and even just kind of experiencing that?
I think that, like, immediately, and I mean like immediately, like upon like this realization, I'm a widow. Somebody
Hmm.
cast me as the wrong character in the wrong movie. like I remember having this conversation, like this voice, my own voice, was like, Heather, like, this is the moment where you choose to either die with him, and never be happy again and never get over it, or you choose to figure out how to live this life happy and whole without him. And I was kind of, like mentally looking at my kids and what story I wanted for them. Because right away, people are like, your poor kids, they've been robbed. They're never, and these are all true things. But I wanted my kids to step out and be like, we lost our dad. It was awful and it's tragic, but yet I just knew like my kids would believe any story I told them. And the story I told them was, you got the very best of your dad. He taught you absolutely everything you're ever going to need for the rest of your life. We are so blessed that we got that time with him. And now we get to work, like making something beautiful of our lives. And that's always been the dialogue. And I remember it was right in the middle of the like first semester. My oldest was a senior, and that, man, wrapping up that semester for the kids, I mean, it was rough. Like the brain just stops functioning and there's just nothing to absorb and nothing to put out. And we were missing a lot of school. I was giving them school days off whenever they needed it, because we never knew, when we'd be on the floor in a mess or laughing over, a game. And at the start of the second semester, we just sort of made a pact. I'm like, it's a new semester. This is the moment where we get up and we soldier on, and there's no more missing school. And we have this loss, and this is going to be here, but we don't get out of life. We don't get out of life anymore. So like, for what those are worth, like that was my path. Those were the mentalities, the beliefs, the mindsets that I kind of had to believe and teach for us
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
carry on.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of, I guess, like you mentioned the word resilience before, and I guess that's the the kind of aspect of, like, that's how you build resilience. Like, you have this difficult thing, and I think maybe some people listening might be like, well, where's the compassion, or where's the whatever? But at some point, compassion can turn into enabling, and enabling can turn into more, problems, like,
Mhm.
and so it's like at some point, yeah, you kind of have to have that line of like, okay, let's let's
Mhm.
let's move on, or not
Yeah.
move, or get going, right?
Yes, keep living. And
Yeah.
and trust me, like loads of compassion, you have to be,
Mhm.
but also there's always a balance. Like it's always finding that right balance in which we continue to talk, grieve, work through, be super patient, but also every day we wake up is a day that we are alive and daddy's not.
Mhm.
And we make the choice now that we don't have the excuse, well, my dad died, I need to stay home. Or my husband's dead, I can't get out of bed. Like we're always going to have that. That's what, after school, you can come home and sleep the whole rest of the day. You can do the weekend and be on the couch the whole day, but we have lives and we have responsibilities. And there's a part of that is required to keep living.
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, when do you draw the line, Ryan? At some point, you do
Right.
draw the line.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Right. No, I agree. Yeah, it's right. Like, there has to be a time where it's like, okay, this is that's the boundary, or that's the, yeah,
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 it's no longer
sure.
the crutch.
Right. Right. No, I agree. Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, in the work that I've done, and clients, like you can see when that line's never been drawn, and like the crutch is constantly there or constantly referred to or whatever. So there does have to be that point where it's like, okay, what is this going to be for me? And I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Hopefully you can remember, but I heard Heather speak at ClickFunnels, and their convention. She talked about some things. If you could just kind of relate the story of Jonah and the whale and kind of how you reflect on that as far as like what that meant, like what your experience and kind of how it tied into this, because I really love that analogy. If you don't mind sharing
Yeah. Yeah. So many people bring that.
that.
That was something that really resonated. And that's, something that really got me through. And
Hmm.
um, Jonah in the whale is a biblical story. And to put it in like cut and dry basic, Jonah was, called by God to, do a job for him. And Jonah was like, oh no, I got my own thing going on over here. I got plans. I got a party at 8, you know, how we do. Like, no, I got other plans. And he didn't do what he was told. And so God was like, we've got some things to teach you, young Jonah. And he was swallowed by a whale. And the analogy of Jonah and the whale is so powerful for me because I have often thought of like the belly of the whale, very much the like grief and loss space. And if you can kind of put yourself in that space, you're in this dark hole, essentially this large dark hole, and no amount of crying or screaming. I had other plans. I was supposed to be somewhere, but I had a future. No amount of screaming and crying is going to change the fact that you are where you are. You don't know when you're getting out, if you're getting out. And there's nothing to do in there until at some point you stop screaming and crying and start asking yourself, how did I get here? And if I get out of here, what do I want to do with my life? And it becomes a very reflective space, dark, cold, and lonely. But
Right.
if you got to be in there, might as well do some inner work. And in the Bible, then Jonah is spit out onto land, and it's where he was supposed to be. Now, by the time he got there, he had done the work and was planted where he was supposed to be, and off he went and fulfilled God's mission. But the other thing that I was really, I guess, motivated by in that story is that when you're in that belly, you think that you're stuck, you're going nowhere, and you're just sitting there and wasting time. But all this time, that whale was moving, and it was taking you where you were supposed to be, where you were meant to be, where your purpose was. And that's such a metaphor for the healing journey, for grief, for loss, for finding who you are. It's dark and it's lonely and it's confusing as can be, and it feels like nothing. And also you're being moved.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And kind of, I think one of the things that you might have already said it, but just I remember what it stood out to me when I heard you speak was just the fact that you're now where you're supposed to be, right? You move to where now. What are you going to do? Like taking that, something I just read the other day, and it stands out to me. And just kind of with this story, it's like each time you encounter a setback, avoid getting stuck in it. Use the struggle to generate new insights about how to make the changes that will pull you through to the daylight. And it's kind of like, I mean, that's sort of what going back to choice, that's what our choice is that we get, we deal or we have these challenges in life, and we can look at them and decide, okay, how are we going to use this for growth? How are we going to use it for understanding? How are we going to use it for helping others? And or are we just going to get stuck in it and just let it consume us?
Exactly.
Stay stuck in the whale, right?
And trust me, I certainly don't ever want to paint a picture that like, it was just so easy. I could just think
Yeah.
myself out of this, because trust me, like time in the belly, like I've been in the belly and I've done the pounding and the screaming and the why me and throwing a fit and all that stuff. But even in that, in my grief space, I learned like I really hate the pain of grief.
Mhm.
It it's physically painful, and I don't like it.
Yeah.
And what do I need to tell myself each day so that I don't have to go through the thoughts that produce the pain that produces the suffering?
Hmm.
And that was just really, that was important to me, because the pain of suffering is, I can't bear, I can't bear it.
Right. Right. Yeah. So yeah, it's heavy. So one of the things that, I mean, besides your story, like when and Heather's on Instagram and she's amazing at it. She does some awesome reels. And but was and people love the idea of tools and things that they can use and strategies that can help them. And so you had this one, reel where you talked about 5 tools that you've kind of learned and understood as far as like healing and adjusting to life after loss. So if we could just maybe kind of go through
Yeah.
those and just kind of talk about them in ways they've helped you and kind of that nature. Yeah, just kind of start with that. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've really been talking about one of them, and that's just
Mm.
the thoughts that you choose.
Hmm.
And I call them healing thoughts, or there's always the thoughts that, what I call, keep you on the floor, on the bathroom floor.
Hmm.
There's the thoughts that just keep you in the poor me, why me, how did this happen to me? And then there's thoughts that you intentionally tell yourself, and these are the ones that lift you, give you some courage for the day, give you the ability to feel lighter, more confident, able to move forward. And so, that's all comes into, like, choosing the thought. So that's definitely a heavy piece for me. Um, Also, journaling has been something I've been doing uh, decades. And I find journaling is the cheapest therapy that you'll ever come across.
Don't say
and
that.
and it's often the most important work that you do, at least for me, in just uncovering what are the thoughts that I'm having and where did they come from, and do I want to continue to hold on to them, and and if not, what are the thoughts that I do want to keep believing? And it really, when it comes to the mind, it's a constant, like, re-scripting, because you have the thoughts that are just like the natural human default setting. They're always negative. And then there's choice in the ones that you, like, choose to put in there and repeat constantly to override the default. And journaling for me has always been a way to sort of process what I'm feeling and what I'm struggling with, and then turn it around and, like, start reprogramming on the daily. So a normal daily journal practice for me is, like, I'll dump out all the things, all the why me's, all the crying, all the this isn't fair, the anxieties, and the weight on my shoulder. But before I finish, I always turn it around and I go to the expression of how I want to think, the memories I want to remember, the beauty in all things, the gifts that I'm being surrounded by, the blessings that are coming my way, so that when I close that up, I'm not feeling drained. I'm feeling lifted. So that's definitely a very intentional practice.
Yeah, and that's awesome. I think too, just from the standpoint, like I said, just the it's going one step past the, yes, I would need to dump the negative and kind of get that out, but then finish with something that's going to kind of reconstruct or rebuild or be on the positive side. So I really like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Another one that has I found super valuable, and this is coming from a type A overachiever. I really had to say no to a lot of things that I really wanted to say yes to, but I didn't have the capacity for anymore. And what I mean by capacity is, loss, grief really diminishes your energy, your output, your brain function, and as a business coach and a mentor, I really had to recalibrate how I work, because I was trying to save myself and my kids, like,
Mhm.
trying to pour into other people. I was definitely very limited in that way, and social situations, and really kind of paying attention to, like, what social situations I could handle in this new space, and what ones I really couldn't, which people actually left me feeling better versus ones that left me feeling more drained and more full of grief. So, the in ways I put myself deeper and deeper in the belly of the whale.
Mhm.
Um, but I think there's times, maybe not for everybody, but at least for me, there's times when you got to walk alone and sit by yourself, and then other times when you don't. So really learning and being vocal with the word no
Yeah.
was a super powerful tool.
Yeah, for sure. And for you, what do you think the struggle in like saying no was? So like, was it feeling like I had to do certain things, or you know what I mean? Like, what was the struggle with that?
Really not wanting my life to have changed, really being
Okay.
bitter that, like you're missing out. Like this didn't fit my plan. Like I'm
Hmm.
supposed to be doing this, and what if I get passed by? I was like super career driven, and like I'm losing my presence, and I'm losing my following, and I'm losing income, and those sort of things. I wanted to keep maintaining them, but it got harder and harder to get up every day, literally to get up
Hmm.
every day. So when your most important work is to get up and show up for the day, well, what are the things that I can't also do?
Yeah. So part of the no in that sense is like a self-care
Yeah.
type of thing for sure, right?
Yeah.
Just that
Hmm.
I need to say no so I can
Yeah.
take care of me, so I can be better
Yep.
for me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course there's social no's and responsibility no's.
Hmm.
Boards that you're on, or volunteer opportunities, or just invitations to things. Being in loss, it thrusts you in a space of feeling like nobody can relate to you.
Hmm.
So, and I'm an introvert already by nature, but I definitely struggle, and still do struggle with social aspects of like, who am I now, and how am I being perceived, and are people hyper focused on me, being a widow, or is it just me? And is this a safe space for me to be raw and slightly broken in?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
you definitely want that sense of safety for sure,
Hmm.
and wanna feel supported, right? I mean, you
Hmm.
don't wanna put yourself in places where it's like, yeah, I'm gonna be judged or looked down on or whatever it is, but I
Yeah.
wanna feel like I can have a sense of support, or yeah,
Yeah.
where I put myself, like I said. Yeah. So
Yeah.
good. Okay. All right. Anything
So that
in
was one, two,
yeah,
three. You'll
that
love
one, two,
this
three.
next one
Okay.
because I think you just got
Yes.
certified in this space.
Yes. Yes.
EMDR.
Yes.
EMDR, which is a psychology space treatment. And
Mhm.
correct me, what is it? I
Eye movement desensitization reprocessing.
reprocessing,
Yeah.
which again, reprocessing the thoughts, reprocessing the memories, and using movements of the eyes. And like, oh, I feel like that really, really changed so much for me.
Mhm.
Um, I also read, and I just read this recently. I wish I would have read about EMDR before I took it.
Yeah.
I just recently read The Body Keeps the Score.
Oh, it's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
Great
somebody
book.
told me that's like the therapist's Bible.
Yeah.
Again, I'm like such a psychology geek. I loved it. But what I really learned and also experienced is the way that the process of EMDR takes an event or an experience that is traumatizing and gives you tools so that your mind is somewhat desensitized to the heightened emotions and pain of it. And so while like the story and the experience I had Larry went missing. We had a search party for him. He died in the mountains by himself. And just, being in that space and having a dead husband, the EMDR didn't change that story, but it almost put a blanket on it where I can tell it, I can see it, I can watch the story unfold in my mind, but it doesn't trigger like, the throat
Mhm.
closing pain and trauma of it.
Yeah.
And so it just gave me a lot of relief, and sort of a more ability to take a step back and again focus on the blessings, the kindness, what I do want to remember. Because I don't, again, like sitting in that trauma all the time actually negates his entire life,
Mhm.
all of the things that we built, the family we created, and it allows that pain to just be like tampered down so that I can really see what mattered.
Mhm.
Is that a good, how would
Yeah.
you describe it?
No, I would do that. I think the other part I'm curious for you, and maybe you don't necessarily have to, I mean, share. I guess we don't. But the other part that maybe people don't recognize with the trauma aspect is that those traumas also create a negative belief in ourselves, and we're trying to, like, that's what you're trying to undo
Mhm.
with the MDR as well. Is like it's yes, the event itself has less emotion, but I've also constructed this internal negative belief that I have
Yes.
about who I am in relation to that trauma. So maybe I feel like I'm not good enough because I wasn't there. Maybe I feel like I'm not good enough because he died alone. Or maybe I feel like, I'm powerless now or because of stuff can happen. So that's the other part that you're helping to work out. And I don't know if you want to share kind of about that side of it for you or what was that?
Yeah, no, and you can ask me
Yeah.
anything you
Okay.
want.
Yeah.
But no, you're absolutely right, because it definitely, EMDR, like, and I've heard it called like some of the hardest work that you do, because you're being taken through a process of getting to the thoughts that create the most pain and trauma in your body. Like,
Hmm.
let's just get to the worst thing that you can think of or that you experienced, and we're just going to sit in it, roll around in it, look at it from all sides, but then we're going to start to rewrite it.
Yeah.
And whether it's thoughts or experiences and beliefs, it is a freaking powerful tool.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm very
No,
grateful for it.
right, right. No, it's
Yeah.
definitely been a powerful thing for people. And like I said, that the belief side of it, we don't always make that connection to it because we just think, well,
Yeah.
this event happened and it's the event that's troubling. And the event is troubling, but there's also those other parts to it that the MDR helps to uncover.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
which help and because those beliefs are there, that's the other part about can help, I guess, stop us from moving forward too, because maybe we don't believe like we deserve something or we don't, because we're stuck in that,
Yes.
not only just the trauma, but just, the everything else that goes with it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So that's four. We're on five now. What's
Oh, five. Okay. This is where I'm going to geek out on you a little
okay.
bit.
It's all right.
So the
You're
fifth one, I was introduced to essential oils.
mhm,
Actually, I wasn't introduced to them in loss, but um, somebody gifted me with two oils right after he passed away. One was
mhm.
actually called Console.
Oh,
One was called Forgive. And I mean, those things sat on my counter for ages,
mhm,
because like, oh, I have an oil for that. It'll fix you right up. Right. But I found myself reaching for them, and I found myself reaching for them more and more and more. And I was noticing a significant shift. It doesn't take anything away, but what I started noticing, especially with using Console, I'd be crying or hysterical, kind of in that like mourning, wailing kind of space. And I mean, I don't know if it was a placebo effect, and I'll take it if it was. But the scent and everything, it just sort of calmed everything down that I could wipe my eyes and sort of carry on. And so, like I said, I started reaching for those more and more. And then I started looking into oils in general. And I started working with a woman, and I started I started reaching for oils for depression, for anxiety, for like just processing and pushing emotions through. And like I have this small toolbox of, plant based essential oils that crazy as it, I don't know, maybe it doesn't sound, but they have been instrumental for me because I'm somebody who doesn't, I don't love medication. Like, I appreciate that there's modern medicine there for an emergency, but like, I'm like psychology based. Like, a pill is not going to fix my thoughts. Like, it
Hmm.
might, right? And
Yeah.
I want to get to the heart of like, what can I actually do to change the experience for myself? And the oils plus thinking and choosing those thoughts have been just massive for me. And I really credit those two oils I was given in the beginning. And if you've ever heard of an oil called ylang ylang, I might not even be pronouncing it right, but YLANG, ylang ylang,
Okay.
it's a flower. I swear it pulled me out of a
Mm.
dark depression,
Oh,
and I just crave that oil and really
right.
lean on it. So, there's every human body has its own experience and its own needs.
Hmm.
And what works for one person may
Maybe.
not work for another, but like, dang, like, if I didn't share the things that worked for me,
Right.
not everybody definitely thinks along the route of like trying other things.
Right. Well, the way that I even look at that as far as like trying to maybe blend it together and maybe give a different perspective for people, it really goes back to that book that you mentioned before, is The Body Keeps the Score. And so our body holds trauma in a certain way. And so even with the idea of like essential oils, it's like, well, if you're giving your body something in response to, what it's experiencing, then you're trying to, I guess, heal your body too, right? And it's like,
Mhm.
it's more than just, it's more than just healing your thoughts, it's healing your body too,
Yeah.
because it has its own response to it. So even if you
No,
just want
that's,
to
I
think about it
love the
that way.
words. Yeah, I love the words that you put with that. And that just really makes me think about like the energy that's in your body that gets stuck, that gets repressed,
Hmm.
that is holding on to trauma. And there are some really incredible ways that you can move that stuff out, without medications, and yoga, meditation, breathing techniques,
Yeah.
oils. These are all along the lines of how do we support the body
Yeah.
while also working through the mindsets as well.
Yeah. I think before I left Vegas, there was like a yoga trauma thing happening
Oh,
or whatever. So I mean, even like I said, yeah, just some stuff like that. Just the
mhm.
body is an important part of like healing, or
Yep.
healing all that. And so if we forget about one aspect of it, it's like, well, maybe we're not getting to where we need to be fully, because that's still,
Yeah.
holding its stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
for
so
sure.
yeah, yeah, great. Well, those are great. So those are some 5 things people can think about and try to utilize in their own process. And not, I mean, obviously we're focusing on the loss side of it, but I mean, I think a lot of those things can be applicable to a variety of
Oh
of
gosh,
of,
being
of
stuck,
situations.
not knowing who you are, big adjustments in your
Mhm.
life, big losses, small losses, a pet
Yeah.
that dies is really awful for
Yeah.
many people. And we're all going through some sort of,
Right.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
the body and the heart needs some help.
Right. So if can you just then maybe tell us a little about what you're doing now personally, and just kind of the work that you're doing, and what if
Yeah.
people wanted to reach out to you, what that would look like?
Yeah. From all of this, I'm definitely on a like self-discovery journey. Like, who is this girl now? Because I'm not who I was before this experience happened.
Mhm.
I'm not yet defined. But I've always, like I said, I've always been in the mindset space, a personal development space, and I've always been quite vocal and present on social media. It's been a big part of what I would call a calling, how I
Mhm. Yeah.
reach
Yeah.
how I reach people that I might be able to serve. And this I'm thrust into this work. This is a
Mhm.
reality for me. I'm not only consciously working through it for myself, but I'm a high learner on the Strengths Finder scale.
Mhm.
You will find me researching all hours of the day, and I can't not share what I've
Mhm.
learned, discovered, and what works for me. And so I have, chosen to speak quite freely about loss and life after loss and love after loss and overcoming adversity to build like a really resilient and happy filled life. And that's where, you and I connected on Instagram. And it's like I said, like to be inspiring, because this is where, the space where I've been thrust, this is where the whale spit me out here in this
Right.
land.
Hmm.
And I'm just embracing it with the best of my ability, and really hoping that what I have gone through, experienced, researched, and found can serve other people. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to believe in wasted experiences. Like, if I have to go through this, um, and I do, what can I add to, the collective with what I've learned?
Yeah. Awesome. That's great. So, so people can find you on Instagram. Is there
Yep.
other places that they can
You can
find
find me
you?
on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. Also heatherquisel.com. That's still my old life website, so it's very business focused. But who knows? Maybe some of your listeners are in that space and can
Mhm.
jam out on some of that
Right.
goodness too. But that's where you'll find me.
Okay, awesome. Well, this has been a pleasure. Like your insights and just everything that you've shared has been wonderful, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this with people, and wish you nothing but the best.
Well, thank you. Likewise, this has been a joy. Actually, I appreciate you sharing your work with me.
Oh, thank you, thank you. All right. Well, have a blessed day.
You too.
Okay.